So, ladies and gentlemen, today again we're taping from Cummings Brothers in Meductic, New Brunswick. Our good friends here have allowed us to record yet again. Great location, great convenience store, great garage, great gas. Please patron and tell them Jeffrey sent you. Now, today we're taking a very interesting look at probably one of the most important players of the 1990s Montreal Canadiens dynasty. Now, when we talk about the big three, every hockey fan knows what that means. Larry Robinson, Serge Savard, and of course, Guy Gerard Pointu Lapointe, better known as Guy Lapointe. Pointu is a very, very interesting nickname, but we'll get into that in the next few seconds. Now, he played with Montreal for a decade. Also had some time with the St. Louis Blues and Boston Bruins. And currently he's a coordinator of amateur scouting with the NHL's Minnesota Wild. But Lapointe is probably best known of being one of the best offensive defensemen of the 1970s. Now at 6 feet, 185 pounds, he wasn't a large presence on the ice, but his speed and tenacity in the defensive and offensive zone allowed the big players like Lafleur, Châtelamer, Mahovlich, everybody else, even on the defensive line, Gainey, Jarvis, Robert Chartres, to, as Gallivan liked to say, to headman the puck, to allow the big players to score the goals, to make the plays. And he also served some great time in a power play. And ironically, Lapointe means Lapointe in English. If you don't really know this by now, anyway. Now, I'm half Lapointe, but it's not the same Lapointe family that's related to us. Now, after a very, very good career with the Verdun Junior Maple Leafs, he ended up with the Montreal Junior Canadiens in the 1968 season with a very strong total of 38 points in 51 games with 11 goals, and he showed a lot of offensive prowess. And he eventually made the big club in 1969, but he had a little bit of seasoning with the Houston Apollos and the Montreal Voyageurs before having a full-time, strength with the Montreal Canadiens in the 1971 season. Now, in that first year, he was one of the top rookies in the association with 15 goals, 29 assists for 44 points, and he was very consistent in his career. He'd score between 10 and 28 goals every season, and in the decade of the 1970s, he was the player that a lot of people relied upon to again keep Montreal strong, especially on the road. He's a very strong player on the road. Now, Montreal won the Stanley Cup 6 times in the decade, including 71, 73, and 76 to 79 inclusive. But Lapointe was also known not only for his bad haircut, as you can see in the photos that are passing you by. He was quite the jokester, and he's mentioned several times in Ken Dryden's The Game how he presented himself as sort of like the clown prince of the Habs. And of course, one of his most famous pranks is when he gave a Vaseline-coated handshake with Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau when he was visiting the Canadiens locker room. He would always find a way to make people laugh, and of course the very famous anecdote about Lapointe being on the road and asking the assistant trainer for the opposite team for a bucket of steam, which is, of course, is impossible. But Guy's career, he paid for it because he was suffering from a lot of nagging injuries throughout the second half of his elite career. He basically, to describe Lapointe's style, basically he would find open ice, or he would find a way in a point to have a driving shot. He was almost like comparable to Steve Shutt, on a Steve Shutt type player on defense, but he had a little bit more skating skills than Steve Shutt. To quote my cousin Jimmy Harvey, Shutt couldn't make it in today's NHL, which I disagree with, but that's his opinion. But he wasn't a pure speed merchant, but he used his speed to his advantage. Now, following his retirement, he became general manager of the Longueuil Chevaliers of the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, followed by a stint of associate coach with the Quebec Nordiques. Now, he later served as an assistant coach and then later as a scout with the Flames, and of course now working with the Wild. Now, his numbers 5 was retired by the Habs in 2014, and he was an inductee to that infamous 1993 Hockey Hall of Fame class that had also Steve Shutt and also Guy was also a part of two of the best Team Canadas of all time. In 1972, he played for Team Canada the Super Series against the Russians, getting 1 assist in 7 games, but his presence was much more than his offensive prowess. And of course, 1976, who some people arguably believe is the best Team Canada of all time, and I tend to agree, no matter what people think about 87 or 72. He had 4 assists in 7 games in that great series where Canada outlasted the Czechs in the 3-game final, the best of 3-game final for the title. Now, the only thing I can say about Lapointe, like I said, he was very deceptive. Most people can't really describe his style of play, but for that decade before, of course, he went on his last couple of seasons with St. Louis, and ironically, Boston was a big rival. He wasn't scared to drop the gloves. He wasn't scared to take advantage of situations like to move up in the play and stuff like that. Robinson was like that. Savard was more of a stay-at-home, but Lapointe and Robinson would headman the puck, or the big wind-up, as Robinson called it, or the Peter Mailers wind-up. His full career, 894 games, 171 goals with 622 points, with another 70 points in the playoffs. So Guy Lapointe is a top 6 defenseman in Montreal Canadiens history, because Doug Harvey's pretty high, and Robinson. I think Robinson and Savard are slightly better than Lapointe, but that's an argument for another time. And in his 16-year career, everybody wanted the Guy Lapointe on their team, and it ended up a lot of teams drafted looking for their Guy Lapointe type player, this led to the great Chelios and McGinnis, the big change in the defensive strategy, offense and defense together. Anyway, on this Tuesday morning, and just a little shout out to my friends and family in St. John. My brother and his wife are anticipating the birth of their new daughter Elizabeth. She's a couple of days overdue. All I can say today, Uncle Jeffrey loves you, and Eleanor as well, my other niece that's waiting for her sister to be born. We wish them the best of luck. You should be coming pretty soon, and all I can say, if you're an uncle in this province, you better pay up, because love gives you a lot, but you also have to support the kids, because you can't say no to your niece and nephew. There's no way. They're here to wrap them around their finger. That's the way it goes. Anyway, this is dedicated to Elizabeth. We love you, sweetie. Have a good day. Bye.